So we had to, on those foundation issues, we had to lift all or each building at the same time. So each building had to be lifted, the whole building, right? So which meant that all of the bottom 8 units had to be vacant at the same time. So it seemed like every single building, all 4 buildings, we had one holdout on the bottom floor that would not move. And I mean, I offered them $500, $1,000 to move. They wouldn't do it. And so we had to keep the whole bottom floor vacant of that building until their lease expired and we could non-renew them, right? So that killed us.
As an operator, I know other investors are romanticizing multifamily investing, and I'm looking to learn from other investors' mistakes. I know you are too, and you found the right place. Welcome to Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. Hey everybody, and welcome to Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. I have the great pleasure of having Kenny Wolfe with me on today. Kenny, how are things down in the Fort Worth, Texas area?
They're great, man. We're here in Plano, Texas. I mean, life is good. It's supposed to get cold down to 42 tonight, but other than that, cold. We're cold for us in April, so.
Yeah, I mean, it was 90 degrees here in Greensboro a couple of days ago. So.
Oh wow, yeah.
It's up and down, just like everything else is crazy in the world right now.
Absolutely.
Kenny, do me a favor and tell me a little bit about your background and what you've been working on.
Yeah, so we've been investing in multifamily assets for over 9 years now. Got started in 2010. That's a great time to get started. And then we've grown to now we're over 4,000 units that we've been a part of, over 5 different states. Right now we're down to 4 states. We sold our deal in Colorado. So we're in Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Ohio. And then we're in multiple markets in Ohio and Texas on that front. And then about 2 years ago, I got frustrated with third-party management, so I bought my own. So I bought into an existing multifamily management company. We're on the hunt for a second one there to acquire another one there in Ohio. That way all of our stuff is basically in-house on that. And then 2 years ago, we branched out, started buying some other assets too. So we also invest in triple net properties. We own $13 stores in 3 different states. We do hard money lending as well. We just funded a boutique hotel in Dallas in January. And then fourth and final thing that we do is ground up development. So we're working on an 88 unit ground up multifamily property now in Dallas, Fort Worth.
Wow. That's a whole lot of years. What were you doing before you jumped into multis?
So before multifamily, I was in oil and gas. I was a CFO at the age of 28 of a spinoff company, and they shipped us over to Shreveport, Louisiana. So we did that for 3 years, and then oil and gas is highly cyclical, as anybody that has studied it at all. But so we jumped right into multifamily. So I've never owned a single family rental in my life. I jumped right into multifamily. So it's pretty awesome. Our first syndication deal was 76 units. So I went from 0 to 76.
Wow. So were you the lead on your first deal, or you came in as an LP, or what?
Well, so my first 2 deals were passive. So one was a 200 unit deal in Arlington, Texas, and the other one was 154 units. Those are 2 passive deals. One was a yield play, one was a value play. So I could kind of see both business models. And then third deal we did was a syndication deal of 76 units here in Dallas, Fort Worth.
Wow. So are you a part of like an investor group, or how did you get?
I was. I'm an alumni from 2 guru groups actually. So, but now I'm a free agent. So I like that's much better now. But I started there. I think that's a good place to start for some folks. I'd say probably of the folks that actually paid the high 20, 30K, whatever it is to get to do that, to do the one-on-one mentorship, probably only 20% actually do a deal, which is horrible, but that's just kind of what it is.
Kenny, that's one of my pet peeves and part of the reason why we started our educational programming. It's just, I don't think you have to buy a used BMW or Mercedes to figure out if you're going to be successful in this business. And so,
right. Well, I totally agree. We have folks that ask me if it's worth it. And I said, well, if you feel like you need to raise money in those groups, then maybe, that to me was the biggest benefit of those groups is how much money can you raise in that group, your first deal. Because if you can raise $1 million, well, that means you can trade up and go into a 70, 80 unit deal where you can afford the full-time third-party management and all those stuff and not start with a 20 unit, which is not fun. So from what I hear. So.
It's not fun. We haven't, but you learn a lot with them, and if you make a
Sure.
mistake, you can recover. The one thing that I've seen though is like a lot of people pay that amount of money, and then they just get the opportunity to raise money for other people's deals, and they don't actually
Right.
lead. And so my thing is, let me go figure out how to lead a smaller deal, and then use that experience to build on. And that's what we've been doing with the
Yeah,
folks.
yeah, no. I mean, there's multiple ways. I mean, there's many ways to get into it. Where because it's definitely a team sport, multifamily. So you can get into it. I mean, a whole bunch of different ways.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have a specific deal you want to talk through, but the thing that you led with is I got frustrated with property management, so I bought my own. I don't know which way you want to go, but that was really intriguing for me.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I can talk about that too. I had another one in mind, an actual property specific one, but we can talk about that too. Third party management. It's a very fractured business, industry, multifamily management. There's a lot of like just crappy to mediocre, players out there. I think this actually, when you go through a crisis like this, it's going to show who's the good management and who's the bad management. So I think we're going to see that play out over the next probably 3 to 6 months on that. But I mean, I'm an accountant by trade, and so if you can't, I got frustrated with the 2 or 3 product management companies we use down here in Dallas Fort Worth because their accounting would never be right. They'd always have CapEx stuff above the line. I'd have to correct it every single month, and this I just got frustrated because they wouldn't listen to me. So if they don't listen to you, you go buy one. So. And the other option was to start your own, and that was going to be like an 80-hour a week, time suck. And so I just figured it's well worth it. Just go buy into one and help mold it from afar. It already had a CEO that ran all the day-to-day stuff. They already had a great accounting system. They had all of the basics there that we could build off of.
So what was attractive about the company that you purchased, and what were some of the tweaks or changes you made in order to make it more of what you wanted to see from a property management standpoint?
Yeah. So one, I just hit it off with the owner and the founder. I definitely hit it off with him on a personal level. We're cut from the same cloth. And so anyway, so that was great. But also too, they had actually on the deal, I was voted in to save a deal in Oklahoma City. There was another. It was actually a coach of a guru guy. Just handed over the keys to me to turn it around. So, but before he did that, he got in this management company, Allied Property Management. But then 2 weeks later, he just handed over the keys to me to do the asset management because we had bought a deal a mile and a half south of there in Oklahoma City, 148 units, and his was 84. So he said, "Look, you're close enough. Just go do it." So anyway, so we did it. So we turned it around, but and I take some of that credit, but really, kind of the on the ground stuff, I got to see up front and close and personal was dealing with Allied and how they did that turnaround, and so. We got that thing at 78% occupancy in October. And then by January, it was like 92% occupied. So Oklahoma City is not like a fast leasing town. It's, and then it's also, that's the dead month too. So to go from 78 to 92 over, in that situation, I thought was great. And then I just, like I said, I just hit it off. And so we talked about doing that. I brought all my properties over to him. And then, now we've really beefed up our staff. And so like our CFO, now for Allied, was the CFO for the family Crow or the Crow family trust, for 20 years, which is pretty awesome. The Crow family, I don't know if y'all know him, but the Crow family is like Dallas royalty, in real estate here. So that was pretty awesome to land. And then our VP of operations, came from Lincoln Property Groups. He worked there for about 15 to 20 years. Before coming over to us. So it's kind of cool to kind of start seeing that and kind of trading up and getting, better and better employees.
Wow, that's awesome. And so, what it sounds like is there was alignment of values. He had a service and skill set that was complementary to what you needed. And that kind of meshed and created an opportunity for you guys to join forces and make a superhero.
Right. Well, and that time too, for his side, I brought in all my units or all the ones in Texas, Oklahoma. And so that basically doubled his unit count. So it all of a sudden made him from, 1,500, 1,700 units back then to 3,400, which is a huge, I mean, to be profitable in management, you got to have 2,000 to 3,000 units to be profitable. So it was a way we can both it was a win-win for both of us.
That's awesome. Sorry to take you on a tangent, but
No, that's okay.
property management is the end all be all in whether your deal's successful or not. And you kind of shook your head towards that when you said, hey, I was asset manager, but Ally did a lot of the day-to-day stuff on the turnaround. So
Right.
let's talk about that deal that you wanted to speak about in particular.
Yeah, so it was our second deal, second syndication deal. It was 133 units in Denton, Texas. We bought it for 34 a door back in 2013. So yes, it was cheap. But back then too, it was really a D class deal. To be honest, no one admits that, but it really was. It was a D class deal. Just because like due diligence, we were walking through one of the units was a 3-bedroom. We counted 16 mattresses in this 3-bedroom unit. They were all lined up against the wall. So I just imagine every night they have to do this Tetris kind of game to figure out how to fit all the mattresses in there. But that's kind of who was living there. That's who this landlord was, what he was doing there. So anyway, so we knew we had a big issue there on the management side. We also knew there was about $250,000 worth of foundation work going into it. So we had all these issues that we knew we were going to tackle. So all that was great. We raised the money up front for all of our rehab. The biggest hurdle that we hit with that deal, and it made me miss my first year cash flow projections on that deal, was that so we had to, on those foundation issues, we had to lift all 4 each building at the same time. So each building had to be lifted, the whole building, right? So which meant that all of the bottom 8 units had to be vacant at the same time. So it seemed like every single building, all 4 buildings, we had one holdout on the bottom floor that would not move. And I mean, I offered them $500, $1,000 to move. They wouldn't do it. And so we had to keep the whole bottom floor vacant of that building until their lease expired and we could non-renew them, right? So that killed us.
What's up, guys? It's your host, Jerome. I just want to let you know we launched Myers Methods in the fall of 2019 with the ambition to inspire a new breed of multifamily investor. If you are interested in getting into multifamily or scaling your current business, hop over to our website at myersmethods.com to grab your free 4-step guide on how to get the ball rolling in multifamily. Now let's get back to the episode.
Us on that, but that was the biggest learning thing was having to, if you're going to raise a building, the whole building, it's got to be vacant on the bottom floor. And so to keep that in mind in your cash flow projections, because that held us back a little bit by not being able to strike a deal with those folks. I even offered them to like move them myself. Like, look, I will move you myself. I'll for the moving company, I threw all kinds of stuff at them and they just wouldn't move. So it really hurt our first year cash flow. We ended up doing like a 4X on that deal. We sold it in this January. So it was a 4X return to investors. But that first year, we definitely kind of missed our cash flow projections on that deal. We also found like 14 sewer line breaks. We had to fix those. So anyways, that's what was causing the foundation issues. But anyways, it was that was our learning. That was probably one of our biggest kind of rehab learning points on a deal.
Now, I gotta ask, you guys weren't scared of the foundations?
So in Texas, we have really bad soil. So it's not if you have a foundation problem, it's when you have a foundation problem here in Texas. So it's more of a norm down here to have foundation issues. Like when you buy a property down here, and you're probably going to spend. I mean, depends how new it is, but even we just bought an A-class deal 2 years ago. The end of 2018, we bought an A-class deal, and it had 20, 30K worth of foundation stuff we had to fix. But it's kind of the norm down here. So it's not we have assets in Ohio, and if we see an asset in Ohio have a foundation issue, that's a big deal. In Texas, it's the norm. We just have really bad soil down here.
So is the soil like shrink soil?
Yeah, it's clay. It's expansive clay.
Okay.
The whole state basically. So
wow, that's wild. And you guys aren't scared of it. You'll just go ahead and jack it up. And so tell me about that process. Like, how do you actually fix it?
So you've got to. We had to do interior piers, and so we had and it was a slab. It's a concrete slab. So you got to cut out squares of the slab. Obviously, take up all the flooring, and then jack the whole building up at once. and then fill in the slab there, redo the flooring, all that kind of stuff. So it's a big project.
So they pour piers and then they retie the slab to the piers.
Right, exactly.
And this is civil engineering at its finest, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we had 2 or 3 engineers go out and check it out for us to see how big the scope is, because they all will tell you something different. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So you said you had to get all 8 units vacant at the same time. Did you, prior to purchasing it, were you able to see where the leases expired, or did you know?
We did, and that was the mistake, right? That was the mistake that I did, that I didn't take into account, was that these buildings that had foundation issues were going to have to be all vacant at the same time, and so we knew the information. It just didn't translate for me over to the rehab part of actually doing those building, raising those buildings.
Minor detail, Kenny.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I had some explaining to do to the investors, but after that sale in January, they were all pretty dang happy about it. So.
I bet. Was this a 2-story walk up or what?
Yeah, it's a 2-story deal. Yeah, 2-story garden style, built in 1968, which is pretty old here for Texas. So it's an older building for us.
Everybody keeps talking about the 60s and 70s being old, but I mean, are you guys tearing stuff down and putting up new? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, in Texas, the only old building we have is the Alamo. Everything else is built in 1960s and newer. So that's not all the way true, but mostly so we don't have a lot of 1960s and 70s or 60s are pretty old for Texas, just because we tend to tear stuff down and build new, and mostly in Texas. So you won't see we don't have a lot of just old kind of historic buildings. You will downtown and places like that, but the population boom in Texas didn't really come about until the air conditioner was invented, and that's no joke. That look that up for those that want to research it, but it's true. So really that was around 50s, 60s, and that kind of that really drove the population increase here.
Wow. Was there any process improvement change? Because I assume you still buy stuff that has issues with foundations. Have you guys modified your process or implemented anything from a property management standpoint to keep this from happening again?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so one, now, yeah, we haven't bought another deal where we had to raise an entire building. We haven't bought one like that. The other ones have been just corner pieces where you don't have to have any vacant units. You can just go underneath and jack it up there if you need to touch it up. But so yes, I mean, if we buy another one that needs the whole building raised, we will for sure make sure to calculate that into our first year cash flow, is to have those vacant.
Wow. We bought a building in Virginia that had a similar issue, except it was a corner, and it sunk so much that it snapped the sewer line.
Oh yeah.
So, people had sewage backing up into their units. And we didn't get it when we closed. We were like, oh, we see the stains and stuff, but we just thought that the previous property owner didn't fix it after maybe somebody was putting fiber in and drilled through the outflow line or something. Right. But then it all made sense when we started making the transition.
Right.
30 or 40 grand, but
Right. You have to love those days when you get those bids for that kind of work. So. But that's why you got to have that rainy day fund, right? So we always raise extra and just put it into we use Chase, but one of those checking account that makes it nothing. But it's good to have that, because you've got to have that rainy day cushion.
How much extra? What's extra for you guys? How much extra do you raise?
So I try to do about at least 2 to 3 months of expenses.
Okay.
Just sits there. Sometimes we do more. If it's a heavy rehab, we'll do more than that. If it's a light rehab, that's kind of our threshold is that number. But the heavier the rehab, we like to pad the whole thing as many places as we can to make sure we got it right. So we don't have those $30,000. Well, so when we do have those $30,000 surprises, we got them covered.
I really appreciate your word choice. When we do, I think a lot of people think, hey, we don't ever have any issues, and that's the whole point of the podcast. We can have stellar operators like you come on and say, hey, look, this happened, we fixed it. and we moved on, and then we make sure that we don't make the same mistake again. But there's no reason for me to go make the same mistake that you made on lifting up a whole building, right?
Right. Yeah. Don't do that.
So, and this is always interesting. So that balance on the rainy day fund, like there's some delusion of equity, when
There
you,
is, yeah, there is. And then, so if when we pad the rehab number, and we do that, that construction, and then, 12 to 18 months typically, if we have extra, we'll return that capital to the investors on the rehab side. On the operating, rainy day fund, we tend to just keep that all the way through. And it's because it probably waters it down by maybe like 5-10%. But everybody sleeps better at night, so it's a much better way to go.
better to have a little dilution of equity than a capital call.
Exactly right. Amen. Amen.
Those are no fun. So, what would you, if you had to give some words of wisdom to some folks who are in the space, either getting in or looking to scale, what would you share with them?
So, picking on the gurus again, they all tell you asset management is easy. It's not, it's a full-time gig. Which is fine if you enjoy it. So you got to really enjoy the asset management and getting dirty sometimes and charging in. It's a people business. So you got to have people skills or be able to learn those people skills. Whenever we have an issue on a property, it's always people, whether it's ours or residents or neighbors, or it's always a people issue, right? So you have to be a people person, be able to connect, be down to earth. I think helps, especially on the maintenance side, connecting with those guys is always a perk to do as well. But it's not the buy a big time asset and take you like 2-3 hours a month to check on the management company. It's a little bit more than that. So.
You're telling all the secrets, man.
I know. Sorry, man.
What do you think the most difficult piece of asset management is? I mean, I think there's two pieces, right? There's the actual operational strategy execution piece of it. And then there's the accounting piece, which I would imagine is pretty intuitive for you because of your training. But like, where's the rub for you?
Really, it was for me. It was when I got up to about 2,500 units, I felt like I was way too much for me. So I started hiring people. So now I have an asset manager, which is great. That's pretty awesome. So he has to do, or he gets to deal with the property and the insurance, the property taxes, and then we both visit the properties quite a bit still. He more than me, but I still like to go and that way we can cover more ground on our property business, because we are spread out, right? We own stuff in Cleveland, Ohio, Columbus, El Paso, Texas, so we can cover more ground with two of us as well. So that was a big help, is to be able to have two people and cover way more ground.
You're the first person I've talked to this across the country. How are you picking your markets?
We got into, I started out here in Dallas, Fort Worth. I thought 4 or 5 years ago, the prices were high, so I was a little early. So I honestly looked at a map and said, what's the biggest MSA that's closest to Dallas, Fort Worth? So I drove up to Oklahoma City. It's like about an hour and 45 minutes up there one way. And then I drove it back that night. And then on the way back, so I like that market too, just driving around, because there was a lot of mom and pops. The whole city is all mom and pop owners, which is like, so they're not efficient on revenue and they're not efficient on expenses. So I was ready to mop up there. But on the way back, I had this aha moment. It's like, if I'm willing to drive, an hour and a half, almost 2 hours one way, and then back a day, what does that look like if I get on a plane? So that really kind of took me like, oh my gosh, I can get to Ohio almost, and Indiana, and like all these other great markets. So it was like, so really dug in. So actually the first market we bought outside of Dallas, Fort Worth is in Colorado Springs, Colorado. So that kind of got me out thinking much bigger, is like, oh my gosh, if we're buying these big assets like this, I don't need to, I probably, when we first bought that deal in Colorado Springs, I flew to that property more often than we did with our 76 unit that we still own today. It's like 45 minutes away from my house. Just because that one it's always 98% occupied. It's stable. There's nothing for me to go. I get in the way if I go to a property like that, right? Because they're not leasing and they're not, they're dealing with residents and all that. So I was actually visiting more our deals in that was a big rehab deal in Colorado Springs we did. But like, again, if you're willing to drive for an hour, 2 hours, I mean, what does that look like on a plane? Because I go to Columbus, Ohio, there and back in the same day, which is a long day. That's a 2-hour flight. So you got to think that you got to hit all your properties and land and hit all the properties. Usually that means no lunch. And then back on the plane that night. So, but usually I'm home the same night, which is nice for the family.
For you to go into a new market, how many doors would you require, or do you require?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I just got pitched a deal. It's an A-class deal in Arkansas, right? So again, like, it's in Hot Springs, so it's a touristy town, right? So, but he goes, it's 89 units. I'm like, 89 units. That's on the border. Now, if it was 80 something units for like a B or C, then I probably wouldn't do it. And on A, you're going to collect enough revenue where that's probably translates to maybe 120 units, maybe 150. So that's kind of our threshold, is 120, 150 somewhere. I mean, the real number is if you can afford a full-time on-site manager and maintenance. If you're buying a 50 unit in a different state, I mean, I don't know if I would do that, because I always want our properties to have its own staff and not have to share staff if we can.
You brought it full circle back to property management problems.
Well, there you go. It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
That's awesome, Kenny. Do you have any wrapping up thoughts?
No, I mean, guys, stay calm out there. This is a great time to invest. I hear folks that are just clamming up, not buying anything. And I haven't seen this good a deal flow in a very long time. I mean, we're looking at 6 deals right now. 2 of them we're just going to take, possibly to take over their loans in Cleveland. So they're just going to walk away from some of these deals. I do think it's a tale of 2 cities on deal flow. So I think the stable, nicer assets are going to ride out this short kind of recession pretty quick. The ones that were struggling beforehand are going to have a big issue. So those are the ones that we're looking at. But again, we've got 6 of them on our desk, looking at these from Lubbock to Cleveland to some in Arkansas. So everybody stay healthy, wealthy, and wise out there too.
Wow, that's awesome, Kenny. Thank you very much. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you, Jerome.
You made it to this juncture, so you really love what we shared on this episode of Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. Do us a favor, give us a 5-star rating, give us a review, and share this with somebody who's interested in multifamily investing. Until the next time, the pack is with you.